Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi yassir wa la tuassir wa tammim bil khair. Let's begin lesson number 23. In this lesson, we are going to discuss form number 8, which is called iftial. And as we know that these are derived forms of the verb, and we always know that there is one or two or maybe three extra letters. In this form, we have two extra letters. We have Hamza and we have Ta. So the root letters are Fa, Ain, Lam, and then there is an addition of Alif or Hamza and Ta. So the pattern will be Ifta'ala, Yafta'ilu, Ifti'alan. And on this pattern, the verb that we are going to learn is Ikhtalafa, Yakhtalifu, Ikhtilafan. So as we can see over here, we have Hamza and Ta. They are extra in this verb form. And please remember that it's a very important verb form. It's used a lot in the Quran. It has several different usages, inshallah, and we will look at some of the characteristics as we always do. And please remember that every verb form has like around 10 to 15 characteristics. As per the grammarians, but we will focus only on the ones that are used in the Quran, like we did in form number 2 up to form number 7. And the example that we can see over here from the Quran is فَاخْتَلَفَ الْأَحْزَابُ مِنْ بَيْنِهِمْ. Then the groups among them fell in dispute. So now we will see, as you know, that we always start with example from the Quran, and then we will see at some of the characteristics. Before we move on to the characteristics, we have a very important point to note over here, that the Hamza of this form, that is form number 8, and it is called form number At, as we know that Hamza and Ta are extra. So in this form, Hamza is Hamzatul Wasl. It becomes silent or vowelless when prefixed to Waw or Fa or any other letter. For example, we have Ikhtalafa. But when we have waw before it with fatha, then it becomes wakhtalafa. Then as we know that this hamza will not be pronounced. And similarly, ikhtalafa, when we have fa before it, then it becomes fakhtalafa. And we have learned in the previous lesson that it happens in three forms of the verb, which is al-madi. So we have ikhtalafa. But if we have waw before it, then we will read it as wakhtalafa. Then al-amr, the amr is ikhtalif. And again, if we have waw before it or any other letter, then it becomes wakhtalif. And similarly, masdar, ikhtilaf, as we know, that's the masdar. And when we have waw before it or any other letter, then it will be pronounced as wakhtilaf. So whenever we have al-madi, or fi'l al-amr, or al-masdar, we must know that the Hamza is Hamzatul Wasl. So whenever we connect it with any other letter, then it becomes Sakin and we do not pronounce it. Now let's look at some of the characteristics of form number 8. The first characteristic is it is reflexive. What does that mean? It is reflexive of form number 1. Form number 1, as we know, is the base form. Like it has three root letters like Nasara, Daraba, Fataha, Samia. Now what happens? A verb that is in form number 1, when it is used in form number 8, it becomes reflexive of form number 1. What does that mean? If you look at the example, inshallah, it will be very clear. For example, we have learned that Hada is form number 1. Hada, and this is the past tense. And what is the present tense of Hada? Does anyone remember?
Hada Yahdi.
Excellent. Hada Yahdi. Perfect. So it means he guided. But when we take it into form number 8, it becomes ihtada. Ihtada. So what is the meaning? The meaning is to be guided. So now I'm sure it's very clear. What does that mean that it becomes reflexive? It means that it refers to the person who is doing the action. He is kind of receiving the action. So it becomes reflexive. So we can see over here, Hada, he guided, and ihtada, to be guided. And if you see, the meaning is also like a kind of passive, but it is different from form number 7, because we know in form number 7, the verb is has the passive meaning, but that is always lazim. But here the verb can be lazim and it can be muta'addi. Now, if you look at the example, قُلِ اللَّهُ يَهْدِي لِلْحَقِّ, say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides to the truth. So we can see over here it is guides to the truth. But when we look at the example, مَنِ اهْتَدَى فَإِنَّمَا يَهْتَدِي لِنَفْسِهِ, whoever is guided is only guided for the benefit of his soul. So now we can see over here that here the meaning is to be guided and here the meaning is to guide. So that's why we say that this is reflexive of form number one. So here it means someone is performing the action on someone, but here the doer himself is the receiver of the action. Is this clear? And please remember that this is the main characteristics of form number 8. We will also look at some other characteristics, but those characteristics are minor. The main characteristic is this one, which is reflexive of form number 1. Number 2, to choose or do something for oneself. What is the second characteristic? That you choose to do something for yourself. For example, kala, as we know, kala yakilu is from number 1, to measure. But when we have iktala yaktalu, it means to receive by measure. So here it is you are measuring for someone else, but here you are the receiver of the action. And as we have this example from Surah Al-Mutaffifin, الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ, who when they take a measure, so we can see over here, iktalu, when they take a measure from people, they take in full. So now how to pronounce it? We will pronounce it as alladhina idaktalu, right? Idaktalu, and we can see over here that Hamza is Hamzatul Wasl. So we will not pronounce it as alladhina idha iktalu. La, with respect to the Quran, it will be wrong. So we will say alladhina idaktalu ala nasi yastawfun wa idha kaluhum aw wazanuhum yukhsirun. So now we can see here that when they take a measure, they take in full. And if you continue the verse of the Quran, it says, when they give it to the people, then they make reduction to that. May Allah protect from us. Adara is to excuse. Adara ya'diru madaratan, and i'tadara means to excuse oneself. As we have example from the Quran, ya'tadiruna ilaykum idha raja'tum ilayhim. They will make excuses to you when you have returned to them. So adara ya'diru is to make an excuse, but i'tadara is to excuse yourself. That's why when you want to excuse yourself, you say i'tadarni, excuse me. So you will say i'tadarni. And now we can see that it is also when we choose to do something for oneself. So number 1, it is reflexive. Number 2 is closer to that, but it's more specific. And how it is more specific? That you choose to do something for yourself. Number 3 is really important. Conscious, effortful action, or to do something with extra care. Now there were some grammarians, they had ikhtilaf on that sometimes from number 1 and from number 8 they are the same. But then the head of grammar, Sibawayh, he said no, there is a complete difference between kasb and iktisab. So what is kasaba? Kasaba yaksibu, kasban is to earn. And when we take it into form number 8, iktasaba, it means to earn with effort. So there is a difference between earning and earning with effort, and we will have a look at that. Laha ma kasabat wa alayha maktasabat. Now, if you look at the translation, it will have the consequence of what good it has gained, and it will bear the consequence of what evil it has earned. Okay, so now we can see that in the Quran we have 2 verbs that are used simultaneously, but in one we have kasabat and the other one is maktasabat. Okay, does anyone remember that kasabat and maktasabat, what do they refer to? You have to remember the ayah number 286 of Surah Al-Baqarah. La yukallifullahu nafsan Illa
إلا وسعها.
wus'aha. Excellent. Okay. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. So nafs, as we know in Arabic, is feminine. So that's why it refers laha ma kasabat. It refers to the nafs. And alayha wa alayha maktasabat. And it has against it whatever it earns. So here we have kasaba is to earn, and iktasaba or iktisab is to earn with extra effort. And as we know, that for doing something good, as Allah has told us in the beginning of the verse of the Quran, that la yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. That means whatever halal things we have been told to do, they are according to our nature. But if we do anything against our nature, which is haram, you can say, so for that someone has to make some extra effort. For telling the truth, we don't have to make any extra effort. But for lying, stealing, someone has to put some extra effort. So that's why iktisab is different from kasb. So kasaba yaksibu kasban is to earn, and iktisab is to earn something with extra effort. And also please remember that in the Quran or in Arabic language, the preposition of ala normally comes when something happens against someone. So, for example, if I say da'utu lak, that means I prayed for you. But if someone says da'utu alayk, that means I prayed or I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala something against you. So that's why we have here the preposition of ala. Not always, but sometimes it happens in this way. Akhada, to take, and not to hear, and ittakhada is to take for oneself. And similarly, when we say sami'a, that means to hear, and istama'a means to listen. So there is a difference between hearing and listening. And similarly, we have akhada, that means to take, but ittakhada means to take for oneself. Ittakhadu aymanahum junnah. They took their false oaths as shield for themselves. So ittakhada is used a lot in the Quran, and inshallah, when we proceed further in the lesson, we will discuss more about it. So is this part clear now? So we have reflexive meaning, yes, and then we have something that we do for ourselves. And now here we have, this is very delicate point over here, and it is used a lot in the Quran. As I said, this form is used a lot in the Quran, and it's used as much as we have seen that form number 2 and 4, they are used a lot, but this form is equally used as form number 2 and are used in the Quran or as in Arabic language. So it's very important for us to learn everything about it. And number 4 is very easy. The triliteral verb, I mean the verb that has 3 root letters, and this form have the same meaning. Sometimes they have the same meaning. For example, karuba, as we know, that is from like karuma, on the pattern of karuma, to be near, and iqtaraba is to come close. So almost they have the same meaning. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. The time of their account has approached for the people. So now we can see over here that in the Quran, the verb that has been used is iqtaraba. However, both of them have the same meaning. Bada'a with ayn, as we can see here, to originate, and ibtada'a is again to begin. Warahbaniyata nibtada'uha. How to pronounce this? Does anyone remember? The rule over here, that's the rule of the tajweed. Warahbaniyata.
نون رهبانية نبتدأ.
Excellent. So there is a small noon inserted into that, and that noon is always with kasra. What's the name of that noon? Does someone remember? Excellent. Noon al-Qutni. Perfect. Yeah, this is different from noon al-Wiqaya. Excellent. So, and we know that after tanween, whenever we have whether we have al or whether we have hamzatul wasl, then the pronunciation changes. The mushaf that we have in the subcontinent, like for example in India and Pakistan, we will see that there is a small noon inserted to that. But the mushaf that we have here in Madinah Munawwara or Saudi Arabia, they don't put noon al-Qutni over there because it's written for the Arabs. So that's why it's clear that they should be able to pronounce how to pronounce it. But for us, we need to know the exact pronunciation. So that's why in the Musaf we see this noon. وَرَهْبَانِيَّةَ نِبْتَدَعُوهَا. As for monasticism, they invented it. So as we can see here, bada'a is to begin or to invent, and that's why from that we have the verb or the noun bada'a yabda'u bid'atan. May Allah protect us from that. And the fifth characteristics is also similar to what we have discussed earlier. It denotes an action that affects the subject, as we discussed in the beginning, that it affects the subject of the verb rather than an object. And if you look at the example of this, in English we say the ice melts. The ice melts. Okay. Where is the subject? Ice. Where is the verb? Melts. Okay. Now, ice is the subject. But is ice the doer of the action or the receiver of the action?
Receiver.
Yeah, excellent. When the ice is melting, yeah, it's basically the action is being performed on the ice. Ice is not doing anything to anyone. But what's happening with the ice? It is receiving the action, and the action is it is getting melted, right? So similarly, what happened over here? We can see that grammatically it is the subject, it's the doer, as we can see here, subject, and this is the verb. But when you look at this, like when we talk about the meaning, then what happens? Instead of doing the action of the doer, it is more like the receiver of the action. And that is the main characteristic of form number 8. If you are able to get this idea, inshallah, whenever you are reciting the Quran, you will really enjoy it. You will really appreciate it because this form is used a lot. And some of the grammarians went to the extent that it's difficult even to say that it has any characteristics. It's difficult to describe it. But then there are some others who have worked a lot on that, and based on that, I have taken a summary of everything that I could, and I have presented it over here. So we know that jahada is from number 1, that means to struggle or to try. Jahada is from number, does anyone remember? From number 3, right?
4.
La, 4 is
Yeah.
aslama. 4 is aslama, yeah. Jahada yujahidu mujahadatan is from number 3. To strive against someone. And we know that the characteristic of from number 3 is it always consists of two parties or two persons. One is doing the action and the other is receiving the action. As we saw, this is, as we say, this is reciprocal, right? But when we take the same root into from number 8, what happens? Ijtahada. And what does it mean? We have discussed many times in starting from book number 1. Ijtahada yajtahidu ijtihadan fahuwa mujtahidun. Anta talimun mujtahidun. You are a hard-working student. So to work hard, literally what does it mean? To struggle against oneself. Of course, when someone is working hard, what is he trying to do? He is trying to do something which could be difficult to achieve or which requires lots of effort and hard work. So that's why this form is called that here the doer is the receiver of the action rather than the doer of the action. Yes, so the characteristics are clear. Any doubts or any questions that you would like to ask? All okay, inshallah? All right, perfect. So now we move on to the forms that we have learned so far. Imagine, look at the journey that we started from form number 1, and now we have reached up to form number 8. Alhamdulillah. Okay, form number 1 is fa'ala, or it can be fa'ila and fa'ula. I have left out something over here for you to tell me. What is the characteristic of form number 1? Quickly, please. Does anyone remember the characteristic of form number 1? I left it out so that you can focus on that. Form number 1, what is the characteristic? Come on, you don't remember form number 1? Sorry?
11.
It's regular. Excellent. Yes, form number 1 is regular, and it has lots of implications, but we will focus on this one, that this is regular or the original form. Okay, what about form number 2? Give me the characteristics, 1 or 2 characteristics of form number 2. Does anyone remember? Yeah, we have moved on from form number 1 to form number 2, and we call them mazid fi. And why do we say mazid fi? Because there is an addition of one letter or two letters to the original form. So here we have addition of tashdid. Okay, I'm not asking about the form itself. I'm asking about the characteristic. What is the characteristic of form number 2? It is causative and intensive. You need to remember this. If you don't remember this, that will be a problem. So form number 1 is causative. You cause someone to do something. For example, nazala, he came down. Nazzala, he brought someone down. Qatala, he killed. Qattala, he killed, he massacred. Kasara, kassara. So it has intensity. It is very intensive. Okay, form number 3. Give me one characteristic. From number 3. I told you a while ago, just 2 minutes ago. It is reciprocal. Yeah? It is what? Reciprocal. That there are two parties involved and one is doing the action and the other is receiving the action. Okay, what about form number 4? What is the characteristic of form number 4?
Causative.
Causative. Excellent. Perfect. Nazala, he came down. Anzala, he brought down. Kharaja, he left. Akhraja, he made someone leave. Perfect. Now we have the verbs that have two extra letters. For example, we have addition of ta and we have addition of tashdid. Okay, two extra letters. Okay, form number 5. What is the characteristic of form number 5?
It's reflective of form number 2.
Excellent. Excellent. It is reflexive of form number 2. Excellent. Okay, what about tafa'ala from number 6? It involves something in the form of group, right? People when they do something together as a group.
This is also reflexive of 3.
3, yeah, but there is another characteristic which, like it makes it stand out from the others. Group action. When everyone is the doer of the action. So what is the difference between form number 3 and 6? In 3, we have two persons, two parties, two groups involved, and one is doing the action and the other is receiving the action. So one is active and the other is basically passive. But in tafa'ala, it is a group action and everyone is performing the action. Everyone is helping the other. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. That example from the Quran, if you remember one example from the Quran, that will be inshallah perfect. Okay, from number 7, we completed recently. What is the characteristic of form number 7? Come on, my students. Shouldn't be like that. It is passive. Passive of form number 1. Passive of form number 1. For example, kasara, he broke, and in kasara, something broke by itself. In kasara, something broke by itself. And of course, I'm sure you remember, whether you are new or old, you should remember that what is the characteristic of form number 8 that we discussed today? Number 1. Oh my God. No one remembers. Reflexive of form number 1. Excellent. Yeah. Now, to be honest, it's very, very important. We have learned 8 forms of the verb, and it is very, very important for you to know each and every form and why and how it is used. If you don't really know that, then I don't think you will benefit from it. So what you need to do, please do one thing. Take a picture, take a printout, put it on your mobile phone, put it in your office, put it on your kitchen, wherever you want to feel comfortable for you, and have a look at it every now and then. Keep on looking at it until you master it. If you don't do that, once you are reciting the Quran, you will be confused. And when we recite the analysis of the Quran, then you might be thinking, oh, what is from number 2? What is from number 4? So from now, you have to do what you have to do. Take a picture and put it on your mobile phone, as a front page of your mobile phone. So you can, whenever you open the phone, you can have a look at it so that you can master it, you can memorize it. All right? And the formula which I gave you to remember is, I'm sure you memorized it. Doing what? Doing tasbih and mujahada are from the basics of Islam. Fa'ala, Sabbaha, jahada, aslama. So we can see that this is number 2, and this is 3, and this is 4. And of course, we know that fa'ala is red. Why? Because this is not derived, this is the original form. That's why we consider it as form number 1, and the focus is from 2 to 8. If we do tadabbur and ta'awun, tadabbara wa ta'awana, there will be inqilab and less ikhtilaf. Inqalaba wa ikhtalafa. So there will be inqilab and less ikhtilaf. So we should have inqalaba and ikhtalafa instead of ikhtilaf over here. So this is one of the ways of memorizing the forms. If you really try to memorize it in this way, inshallah, it will help you a lot. Now, how to make fi'l al-amr? Yes, does anyone remember how do we make fi'l al-amr?
The last letter should be sakin.
Sakin. So for example, we take takhtalifu or yakhtalifu. So what we do, we make the ending sakin. Okay, perfect. As we can see over here, the ending is sakin. Yes.
Delete the alamatul mudariya.
Ahsanti. Then we delete ya alamatul madare. Yeah. And after that, yeah, if it's readable, it's fine. If it's not readable, then what do we add? Hamzatul wasl. Hamzatul wasl. Hamzatul wasl. Okay. Hamzatul wasl. Okay, why this Hamza has kasra? Why not fatha or dhamma? Because
the third letter has fatha.
Excellent. The third letter. If the third letter has fatha or kasra, then we put kasra. Otherwise, we put dhamma. So fi'l al-amr will be ikhtalif. And then fi'l al-nahi is really simple. We make the ending sakin and it becomes la takhtalif. And this is la an-nahiya. So when we use it, then we know that the ending becomes sakin. So ikhtalif, la takhtalif. And how do we make ismul fa'il? Yes, does anyone remember? Very simple, right?
We should add mu.
Mu in the beginning. Excellent. And then the second last letter
will be kasra.
Kasra. So if it takes kasra, and then in the end we put tanween, so it will be ismul fa'il. And if the last letter or the second last root letter has, or the letter has fatha, then it becomes ismul maf'ul. Excellent. So you see the small difference makes a big change. Okay. So ismul fa'il will be mukhtalif and ismul maf'ul will be mukhtalaf. So ismul fa'il is the doer of the action and ismul maf'ul is the receiver of the action. This is active and this is passive. And the reason why we are not doing it all in detail, because we have been doing it from book number 1, 2, and now we have reached the end of book number 3. So I'm sure you are able to understand it, right? Is this clear?
Yes, Ustad.
Okay, so as usual, we have as-sarf as-saghir. So ikhtalafa yakhtalifu ikhtilafan fahuwa mukhtalifun, as we can see over here. And then when we have the passive, it will be ukhtulifa, as we know that it is always on the pattern of fu'ila. And before fu'ila, whatever we have mutaharrik, we change it into dhamma. So ikhtalafa has changed into ukhtulifa. Ukhtulifa yukhtalafu ikhtilafan fadhaka mukhtalafun, as we have discussed here in a minute ago. And then fi'l al-amr will be ikhtalif, fi'l al-nahi will be la takhtalif, and dharf az-zaman wa makan will be the same as ismul maf'ul. It will be the same. However, from the context we will know that whether it is used as dharf zaman or makan or as it used as ismul maf'ul. I have a question here now. Ikhtalafa, if I have fa before it or if we have waw before it, how do we pronounce it? Wakhtalafa. Okay. And before the passive, if we have waw before it, now how do we pronounce it? See, now you find it difficult to pronounce, yeah? So please remember, the rule is the same. It's a very delicate point. You need to pay a very special attention to this. So the idea is the same. This is Hamzatul Wasl and this is also Hamzatul Wasl, okay? This is not the original Hamza. Both of them are Hamzatul Wasl, okay? So whenever Hamzatul Wasl comes in between, it is not pronounced. So it will be the same. Wakhtulifa. It will be wakhtalafa and it will be wakhtulifa. It is a very important point. Please keep in mind and write it down. As the sister tried to pronounce it, وَأُخْتُلِفَ, and it was difficult to pronounce it. So because it was unnatural, and when you say وَأُخْتُلِفَ, it is easy to pronounce. So whether it is active or passive, the Hamza is what? Hamza is Hamzatul Wasl. And we should know that Hamzatul Wasl is always sakin, it is always wawulless. It is not pronounced when we have any letter, whether it is waw or fa or we have any other letter before it. Is this clear?
Okay, Ustad.
Okay, excellent. And then we have some examples, some more examples of form number 8. As we know that Hamza and Ta are extra into that, as they are also called augmented letters, like extra letters. And then if you look at some of the examples over here, Jama'a is he collected or he gathered. And when we take it into form number 8, it becomes Ijtama, that means he came together. And from that we have Mujtami'un, that means the people or the society. That's why we call them Mujtami'. Sharika, he shared, and Ishtaraka is he entered into partnership. Ishtirak, as we say, if you go to any of the restaurants here in Saudi Arabia or any of the pharmacies or any place, they ask you, Hal indak ishtirak? Do you have membership? So that's why it is used for membership. That when you have a membership with something, that is called ishtirak. Janaba, he turned aside or he avoided. Ijtanaba is to turn aside or to avoid. Ijtinab is avoiding something. Ijtinab. And then we have Naha, he prohibited. Intaha, he terminated or he ceased. And that's why we say Intaha ad-dars, the lesson is finished. Nadara, he saw or he looked, and intadara, he waited. Also, we need to know that sometimes the meaning of form number 1 and form number 8 are completely different. We need to know that as well. It's not always the same that the meaning will be similar. Sometimes the meaning are completely different. This is also one of the characteristics which I did not mention previously, but now you should know that sometimes whatever the meaning we have in form number 1, when we take it into form number 8, the meaning will be completely different. For example, harama is to be something that is haram, that is prohibited. But ihtarama means to respect. Similarly, naha, he prohibited, but intaha, something finished. So the meaning is completely different. Similarly, nadara, he looked, and intadara, he waited. Again, the meaning are completely different. Now this is your complete table over here, where we have the form, we have fi'l al-madi wal-mudari wal-amr, and then we have masdar, and then we have fa'il and maf'ul. So starting from form number 2, we have completed all of them, and then we move on to the last one over here, which is form number 8, which we have discussed today, ifta'ala, and we know that hamza and ta are extra. Ifta'ala yafta'ilu, fi'l al-amr will be ifta'il, ifti'al, and then Ismul fa'il is mufta'il and ismul maf'ul is mufta'alun, as I can see over here. So what you can do, you can take a picture of this if you want to, and you can memorize it like this from number 2 up to from number 8. We have some more details. So do you want to proceed, or is this enough for today?
Yeah, it's okay, Ustad. We can proceed.
We can proceed. Okay, so I will start the meeting again so you can join in again in case the meeting is finished. So now from number 8, it goes through some phonetic changes. Some changes in the pronunciation will take place as well. So what happens, the extra ta, as we know in iftahala, the ta is extra, in this form undergoes certain changes due to phonetic reasons as below. As we know that in Arabic, sometimes the letters get dropped, the letters get merged, and sometimes the letters are completely changed. And the reason is it's just because of the reason of the pronunciation. There is no other reason behind that. So now we can see over here, if the first radical of triliteral is dal, zal, or da, then the extra ta changes into dal. This is the first thing that we have to notice over here. Again, what is the change that takes place over here? If we have the first radical of the triliteral or the three or the thalathi mujarrad, if it has dal or zal or dal, the extra ta changes into dal. Okay, now if we look at it over here, inshallah, it will be further easy to understand. So the root letters are da'a. Da'a. We have ifta'ala. So in ifta'ala, we have the hamza will remain as it is. And in fa'ul kalima, what do we have? In fa'ul kalima, we have dal, as you can see over here. So fa'ul kalima is dal. Okay. And then after that, what do we have? Ta. So what happens over there, as we have discussed, this ta changes into what? It changes into dal. Ta changes into what? Dal. So what do we have over here now? Id da'a. And do you know the rule of idgham? We have discussed in book number 2 in detail. The rule of idgham, that when two letters are the same, then they get merged or assimilated, and then we put a tashdid on that, so it changes into idda'a. Idda'a. So it was basically idda'a. As we can see here, the original form will be idda'a, but then again, when we have dal, zal, or dal, and then this ta changes into dal, and you can see clearly over here that this ta has changed into dal, so it has become idda'a. And we have in Surah al-Mulk, فَقِيلَ هَذَا الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تَدَّعُونَ. This is what you were asking for, or you were claiming. So we can see over here clearly that this ta has changed into dal. Is this clear? Is there any doubt or ambiguity? If there is anything that's not clear, please let me know.
Only Zal, Zal, Za, and Dal changes into Dal, Ustad.
Yes, these three letters as of now, yeah, as of now, these three letters, dal, zal, and da, then the ta changes into dal. Look at the change. The change is completely different. Ta has changed into what? Into dal. And we can see over here, this was ta ifta'ala, but here this ta has changed into dal. Why? Because of the root letter. We can see that the root letter has dal into it. Good question. Then we have dhakara, as we can see over here. So we have ifta'ala, and of course in fa'ul kalima we have, what do we have? We have dal over here. So it becomes id takara. We have to change, of course, all the root letters. This is the pattern over here, and then we have to change the pattern with the original root letters. What are the original root letters? Dhakara. And when we put it into ifta'ala, it becomes id takara. And then again, same thing happens over here. This ta changes into what? It changes into
Dal.
dal. Perfect. So it changes into dal, and now it becomes id dakara. What happens over here? Id dakara. Now there is one more change over here. Dal is more powerful than dal. Dal is more emphatic than dal. That's why it takes over dal. When you see, even when you're pronouncing, dal is soft and dal is little bit hard. So that's why what happens, it takes over dal. And now what root letters do we have? We have id dakara. And then we have to, of course, do idgham. And after idgham, it becomes iddakara. Iddakara yaddakiru iddikaran fahuwa muddakirun. Fahuwa muddakirun. And what a beautiful verse of the Quran. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن muddakir. Now you see over here. Now look, if you want to pronounce it as muddakir, it's difficult to pronounce, right? Muddakir. But when you say muddakir, it's easy to pronounce. And there is a logic behind that. The grammarians, they say that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we have made it easy for you to understand, even linguistically it has become, and pronunciation has become easier. And instead of muddakir, what is the pronunciation? Muddakir. Yeah, and you know, laqad, as you know, that this is used for qasam, yeah. laqad is used for qasam, and jawab al-qasam is always mahdhuf, and you know that qasam is used for the purpose of emphasis. Then you know that yassara yassiru taysiran is from number 2, and it consists of continuity. So you know that this is emphatic and continuous. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used al-qasam. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used from number 2, which includes continuity. That means continuously we have made it easy for you. And of course, na refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So who is making it easy for us? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is being made easy for us? Al-Quran. What for? Lidhikri, for the remembrance, for the memorization. And then there is an open invitation for everyone, not only for me and you. There is an open invitation for everyone. So is there any who will remember? So then the ulama and the grammarians, they say that it is easy to read, it is easy to memorize, it is easy to understand. That's why whenever you hear whenever someone says Quran is easy, is difficult, you should always refer to this verse of the Quran first for yourself as a reminder, and then I think this verse is repeated 5 times in the same verse of the same surah of the Quran 5 times. So I think after going through this verse of the Quran and analyzing it, there is no excuse for us now not to try to understand the Quran. And there is an open invitation we can see over here that this is easy to understand, but someone has to step up and he has to try, and that's what we are trying to do, inshallah. Then we have zahama. So this is very simple over here. So first we look at the root letters. So we have is dahama, and you can see over here that here ta has changed into dal and it becomes is dahama. Is dahama means when something becomes crowded something. So that's why we say is diham, something that is crowded. So you have seen that dal and za over here, they have changed into what? They have changed into dal. So ta al kalima has changed into dal over here, and also it has changed over here. Number 2, if the first radical of triliteral thalathi mujarrad, the verb that has 3 root letters, is sad, dad, ta, and dha, and you know that they are all emphatic letters, they are heavy letters, then extra ta changes into ta. So ta changes into ta. Let's look at the example here. For example, we have sabara. So we have ifta'ala, and then we have tabara first. So we have here ta over here and we have ta over here. However, now the ta has to go through a change. Why it has to go through a change? Because we have sad as one of the root letters. So when we have sad as one of the root letters, then what happens? This ta changes into ta. It changes into ta. So it becomes istabara. Istabara. Does anyone remember the example, the verse of the Quran? وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاسْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا. وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاسْطَبِرْ. So the ulama say that sabr is patience, but then istabara is the highest level of patience, to have more patience. And that's why when Allah says in the Quran that وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ, ask your family members or order your family members to pray, وَاسْطَبِرْ, and then you have to have lots of patience for yourself to be consistent, and also to make them consistent as well. Daraba, as we can see over here again, ifta'ala, so it is id taraba, and then again the ta has changed into ta, so it becomes id taraba. So what happened over here? Because we have sad and we have dad as the root letters, and then what happened? This ta kalima has changed into ta. It has changed into what? Ta. And why is that? Because you know these are heavy letters, so it's difficult to pronounce a light letter after the heavy letter, so that's why both of them become heavy. So id taraba is difficult, but id taraba is easy to pronounce, so that's why it has changed into id taraba. And then we have next tala'a. Again the same example, similar example. So we have here if ta'ala, and here of course we have to put the root letters. So when you put the root letters, then fa will be changed with ta, because here we have the first letter is ta, then ta remains as it is, Lam, Ain al kalima will be lam because here we have lam, and lam al kalima will be ain because here we have ain. So what happens now over here? It is what? Tala'a. Tala'a. And then what happens after the change? This ta changes into ta. So it becomes tala'a. Tala'a. And we know that whenever we have two letters that are the same, we have to do what? We have to do idgham, assimilation. So after assimilation, it becomes ittala'a. He knew. So when you try to know something, it becomes ittala'a. We are about to finish, and here we have a very beautiful verb of the Quran that is used a lot, inshallah, and we will learn about it. If the first radical of the triliteral verb is wow, it gets assimilated to the ta. So now wow changes into ta. How? Waqa. So what are the root letters? Waw, qaf, and ya. Waqa, right? So we have iftala and we have if taqa. What do we have? If taqa. And what happens? This wow, this ta, or in fact wow, it changes into what? It changes into ta. So what happens? It becomes it taqa.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after the idgham, it becomes ittaqa. Ittaqa. And what does it mean? It means to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it was iftaqa, and then this waw has changed into ta. So we have one ta here and we have one ta over here. And we know that when we have two letters that are the same, and then we have to do idgham, so it becomes ittaqa. That means to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Waqa is to save someone, but ittaqa is to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you look at this verb, I decided to discuss in detail because we have lots of examples in the Quran. Ittaqa, yattaqi, ittiqa'an, fahuwa muttaqin. Fahuwa muttaqin. Okay. Muttaqin is singular. The dual will be muttaqiyani. You know that here there was ya, that ya has been dropped, but in the dual, ya comes back, so it becomes muttaqiyani for the dual. And for the plural, it is muttaquna. What will be the real form of muttaquna? Yes? Does anyone remember? It seems you haven't, you have like forgotten lots of things. Yes? Muttaqa yuna. What is the form? The real form is what? Muttaqa yuna. So now we have two weak letters. We have ya and we have waw. And when we have two weak letters together, we have to drop the one that is the part of the root letter. That is a part of the root letter. So which one is the part of the root letter? Waqaya.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So what happens now? We know that waw is compatible with dhamma. So that's why it becomes muttaquna. Now I have explained one example in detail, and then whatever example you come across, please make sure that you try to make the dual and also you try to make the plural as well. So muttaqin, muttaqiyani, muttaquna, and as we have example in the Quran, ulaika humul muttaqun. Such people are the ones who are God fearing. And muttaquna is marfu. What is mansub and majroor? Una, ina, ina. Muttaquna, muttaqina, muttaqina. What about Quran? ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. A guidance for the God-fearing. So we can see over here, it is muttaqin. And the reason, as I said, we discussed all these examples in detail because this is used a lot in the Quran, and you should not, now you should know, and I'm sure inshallah you know that how it is used and why these changes and how these changes have taken place. And the last one we have over here is akhada. You know, it's also used a lot in the Quran, right? So if the first radical of the triliteral verb is hamza, as we can see here, akhada, it's hamza, it changes into ta as well. So two letters, waw and hamza, they change into what? They change into ta. Excellent. Yeah, perfect. So akhada, it becomes like ittakhada, as we can see over here. And now what will happen over here? Here this Hamza will also change into Ta. So it becomes Ya. So now we have a combination of Ta plus Ta. And you know what happens when we have two letters that are the same? We have to assimilate idgham, and then we have to put tashdid on that. So it takhada changes into ittakhada. Ittakhada. And we have lots of examples of ittakhada in the Quran, and inshallah when we do the lesson and when we do the exercises, we will definitely come across all these examples of ittakhada. So it will be ittakhada yattakhidu ittikhadan, to take something. But here the difference between akhada and ittakhada will be akhada means to take, but ittakhada is to take something with extra care. And inshallah when we discuss more in the examples and also the examples from the Quran, it will be inshallah clearer. Any questions? I know lots of information over here. So in case I know for the first time lots of information, it's difficult to digest, but the best way would be to write it down, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Alladhi allama bil qalam. So you have to use your pen, write down all these details at least once with your own hands, and inshallah then you will see the difference. You will never forget this information again. And if it's not clear for the first time, or if it's difficult to remember, write it down and go all the points one by one. Memorize one today, one tomorrow, one after tomorrow, and keep on memorizing until you master it. And inshallah, as we have seen today, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So the invitation is open for all of us, and inshallah we have to say labbaik to that, and we have to make our best that we try. And then for us it's only the try. Laysa lil insani illa ma sa'a. We have to only try, it's not the perfection. And inshallah as long as we keep on trying, we are hopeful that inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it from us. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته أستاذ. جزاك الله خير أستاذ.
وإياكم.